So welcome to Parashat Beha'alotecha, and it is an action-packed parasha, if there is ever one. And I'm absolutely delighted to have with me Yossi Stepansky, who is actually a tour guide, a famous tour guide here in Tsfat. You've written several books, and it really is a pleasure. We have so much to discuss. I don't even know how we're going to fit it all in, but here's what we're going to try. Firstly, Yossi, just tell us a little bit about your history and how you became this amazing tour guide in Tsfat.
Okay. I think I should start maybe with my great-grandfather who was here in Tsfat. My grandfather was born here in Tsfat. My mother's family here is in Tsfat. I wasn't born in Tsfat, okay? But I came to Tsfat as a grandchild. My grandfather left Tsfat, so I came back to his hometown in 1979. And then I got married and I brought my wife from the Negev here, and we've been living in Tsfat since. We have 5 children, Baruch Hashem, 12 grandchildren.
Amazing.
I hope my grandchildren will come back to Tsfat because I came back to my grandfather's hometown.
Amazing. But you're a great historian. How do you get interested in history?
Yeah, okay, I'm not the great historian. I'm more of an archaeologist. Okay?
Archaeologist.
And I worked for many years for the Israel Antiquities Authority in this area. I did a lot of surveys and excavations for years. Not only in Tzfat, but a lot of work in Tveria, in the whole area between Tzfat and Tveria for many years. And I'm continuing to work. I'm doing research now in Tzfat.
Oh.
After so many years, I'm delving into things that I didn't even think about once, like the cemetery of Tzfat, the ancient tombstones. There are 130 ancient tombstones from 500 years ago in Tzfat we didn't know about. And so I'm doing research there. And also on Tzfat itself, a lot of work still has to be done on the history of Tzfat.
So let's go straight into the parasha. This parasha starts with Aaron lighting the candles. He saw the tribe leaders giving the gifts for the inauguration of the temple, of the Mishkan, and the Levites weren't involved in that at all, and he felt kind of left out. And God said, don't worry, yours will be greater than theirs. In other words, your lighting of the candles will be something that will be continued forever, and we see that through our Chanukah, that we continue. But tell us a little bit about the Menorah, because this is a very fascinating piece of Jewish art, if you like, and ritual.
Okay, so the parasha begins with the Menorah, that's right. And by the way, Tzfat begins its Jewish history with the Hashmonaim. Okay, the Maccabim, after they do their thing in Judah, they come up to the Galil and they settle down here in the Galilee and here in Tzfat also. So Tzfat's Jewish community goes back 2,100 years to the Hashmonaim. But the Menorah itself is depicted, it's described already in Shmot, okay, not only here in Bamidbar. And there's a pretty big argument in how it looked exactly, okay? Did it look like maybe this, with the rounded branches, okay, like we all depict, I think.
Right.
But there are some, like Chabad, who believe it looked like this, with angled branches, like the Rambam, like Maimonides, made a drawing of it himself. Okay, and he wasn't such a great artist, but Maimonides, the Rambam, was a famous physician, but he gave a drawing. Did he mean that's the way he thought that the Menorah looked like? Most researchers, most scholars believe it was rounded. It was rounded, and
you discovered some evidence of that, right?
I myself, in my archaeological work, had the pleasure of discovering about 6 or 7 ancient menorot from the time of the Talmud, including one, a beautiful capital from near Rosh Pina that had 4 menorot incised on them. Here I am holding it in 1979, 1980. Okay? And today it's in the president's residence in Yerushalayim. So I can't see it anymore. I don't know if you have to go. You have to be invited to see it. It's there.
Right.
And
I'm surprised it's not in a museum or something.
I think it was in a museum, but today here it is in the president's residence. It's here, okay, standing there, and only prime ministers and people like that, they get to see it.
Right.
And the question is, in archaeology, we find the menorah almost always with rounded branches. We have maybe 1,000 depictions of the menorah in archaeology, not only in Israel, but we have in Italy, of course, and we have the very famous depiction of the menorah on the gate of Titus, okay? Of course, we have it here, and here it's rounded. But look at the base. It has a base, a 3-staged base that's square and not a tripod. But all the menorot that we find in archaeology have three-legged tripod. Okay, and so what did it really look like in the Beit HaMikdash? There wasn't only one menorah. The Parasha talks about one menorah that was made of gold. Okay, that was already in the desert and brought to Israel and put in the Beit HaMikdash.
Right.
And taken away by probably the Babylonians, or maybe even before, hidden by one of the kings of Judah, maybe Chizkiyahu or Yoshiyahu, or that already then. And so it's a big question what the menorah original one looked like. But in any case, pretty recently, we have a very important discovery of the menorah found in Magdala, from before the destruction of the Second Temple. In other words, we have here a depiction on stone, okay, of the earliest artistic description or display of a menorah ever found in Magdala.
What year was that?
That's about, I would say, 30, 40 CE, which is a few tens of years before the destruction of the Second Temple.
Wow.
And so the person who made this depiction, here's another way of looking at it, okay? So the person, the artist who sculptured this menorah on stone, he himself probably saw the menorah in the Beit HaMikdash. And here we have also a tripod and rounded rounded branches. And so it seems that the Rambam, who made this drawing, probably didn't mean that this is for sure the way the menorah looked like. He wanted to give a sketch, probably. But there are some people that say that there were a number of menorot, and maybe some of them were angled.
Right.
There's another question also from here. It says, El mul pnei ha-menorah, the candles themselves used to face the central candle.
Right.
But the question is, which way did the menorah stand? East-west or north-south? That's also an argument in the Talmud. And most say that it stood east-west. I think it's still an argument. And in any case, the candles either pointed to the middle one,
right,
or there's a thought that maybe the candles all faced west, meaning to the Kodesh Kodashim.
How interesting.
The west is very important in Tsfat also.
Why?
The Shekhinah is in the west, and the Ari pointed west, because the Shekhinah, the Holy Presence, is in the west.
Rather than
When he was saying his Kabbalat Shabbat, he pointed west. That's why we point west at the end of the Kabbalat Shabbat.
That's right.
Here in the Alshech also.
Yeah.
Here in the Alshech, I don't know if they pray west all of Kabbalat Shabbat or only for Bo'i V'Shalom at the end of the L'chad.
They pray west for the whole of...
That's the way the Ari did it. Of course, here in the Alshech. The oldest shul maybe is still standing in Tzfat.
Yeah.
They did it the way here in Abu Hav. Okay, they point west. Like the candles of the Menorah pointing west to the Kodesh Kodashim. Why? Because the Shekhinah, the holy presence, HaShekhinah, is in the west. It says in the Talmud. That's why the Ari pointed west. He's welcoming in the Shabbat, the bride, okay, the queen, who is the Shekhinah herself. Yeah. They were welcoming in from the west. So that's also in our parasha.
So let's talk about the children of Israel moving, because they moved some 38 times. And the Alshech has a very fascinating idea, which I'd like to share with you. He says that, why did they move? Sometimes they stayed at a camp for a day or two, sometimes for a month, sometimes for a year. Why the change in times? So he says like this, he says that the only reason they moved was that if and when the Jewish people did something wrong, the Shekhinah had to move away from that place. Like, you couldn't stay in that place. And so the movement of the clouds and the movement of the camp was a trigger for teshuvah. They understood that they did something wrong, they did the teshuvah, and then once the teshuvah was accepted, the cloud could settle again.
That's probably in one of his sermons, one of his famous sermons that he said right here.
Right.
on this bima.
That's right. But tell us about the movement, because you have some ideas on the date and the importance of the date.
Okay, so first of all, it says in our parasha that they were at Har Sinai, at the Mount Sinai. They camped there for almost a year. A year, less 10 days. Okay? They started moving on the 20th of the second month. The second month is Iyar. Okay? They came on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Okay? So they moved almost 1 year, and then they started moving from place to place.
But you said Iyar is an important month.
That's right. Iyar, okay, doesn't have ancient holidays that we have in the Torah, but today we have important days in Iyar. We have Yom HaAtzmaut, the 5th of the Iyar. But here in Tzfat, Rosh Chodesh Iyar is Liberation Day, 1948.
That was the day that Tzfat was liberated.
Rosh Chodesh Iyar is the day in 1948, Tashach, that Tzfat was liberated. Now we're in Sivan, okay? The last month, Iyar, 75 years ago, we had the liberation of Tzfat. But you know, I remembered we have the famous pasuk here, Vayi ben So'aron kuma Hashem, v'yafutzu oivecha, v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha. Okay, since you reminded me of the War of Liberation, this pasuk, Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha. Can God please scatter all our enemies? Okay, let's finish it up. This pasuk was shouted out in the Ari Ashkenazi synagogue, which was the main shelter for the Jews in the 1948 war. So while the Palmachnikim and the people at Tzfat were fighting on Rehov Yerushalayim, 100 meters away, so down behind the front lines in the Ari Ashkenazi synagogue, that was the main shelter. That was the pasuk they were shouting at the time, with Rabbi Osher Zavtz leading them. Okay, that I wrote in my book. That's what I heard from people who were there.
Wow.
Okay, the elders of Tzfat. So this pasuk is also part of our history here in Tzfat, our heritage.
Amazing. And of course it's bracketed by the two nuns that some people say is a whole book of making the 5 books of Moses into 7 books of Moses.
Okay.
But and then there's references to the trumpets, and I think you have an image of...
That's right. Here trumpets. I saw in our parasha, we have mentioning the chatzotrot, the trumpets, and it says here exactly if, for instance, Moshe Rabbeinu wants to gather the patriarchs, the heads of all the tribes, okay, one trumpet calling, one tki'ah. If they do one tki'ah, they'll know they have to gather to get, to have a cabinet meeting with Moshe Rabbeinu. And but if you want to go to war, it's already a tu'ah. It's like a boop, 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 boop. And we have a depiction of the Chatzotzot, maybe the only one, I don't know if the only one, but on Shal Titus, on the sculpture of the gate of Titus in Rome. Okay, we also have the trumpets that were taken away.
Very long.
The very long ones, right?
Yeah.
Not a shofar,
Yeah.
okay? It's not a ram's horn. They're long trumpets. And here we see them being carried away in the procession.
I had the great privilege of praying at the synagogue of the Yeshiva Betel, opposite the Kodesh HaKodeshim and the tunnels
Of the Rosh
in
Hashanah.
Jerusalem. Yeah, and at the end of that service, two trumpets come out and
Long ones?
Yeah, long ones.
Them
In the silver long ones. It's quite amazing.
Yeah,
And then there's a whole story about the Sanhedrin being created when the Jewish people complained to God to Moshe. God says to and Moshe says, I can't deal with these people. Help me. Then God says, okay, I'll create an assembly of 70 elders, and they will help you to administer the Jewish people. And so you have some interesting insights into the Sanhedrin.
Okay, so I realize, like you said, that the foundations of the Sanhedrin are set here in our parasha. Okay, when Hashem tells Moshe that I'm going to give you 70 people. Okay, I don't think Moshe is the one that looked for them. They were already appointed, anointed already.
Yes.
I'm sure very holy and very important people. And these 70 people are the ones that became afterward what's called the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin is a word in Greek.
That's right.
Okay, Sanhedrion. And later on, in the time of the Second Temple, they were the main court, the Sanhedrin, the Beit Din Gadol. And they were in Yerushalayim. And after the destruction of the Second Temple, a little before, they left. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was able to leave, and the Sanhedrin continued to be the leadership of the Jewish community in Israel after the Churban, after the destruction of the Second Temple. They went to Yavne. Okay, and after Yavne, after the Bar Kokhba war, they came here to the Galil. They went to Usha. From Usha, they went to Shfar'am. From Shfar'am, they went to Beit Sha'alim. Beit Sha'alim, not far from Chifa. From Beit Sha'alim, they went to Tzipori. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was in Beit Sha'alim. And Tzipori, the Mishnah was compiled then, about 200 CE. And from Tzipori, they came to Tveria. In Tveria, they were there in a few hundreds of years, okay, until about the 10th century. And then they had to go to Ramle. Ramle, they were there for a little bit. Ramle was an important city, and there were Jews in Ramle 1,200 years ago also. From there, they went to Yerushalayim, but from Yerushalayim, in the 1070s, the 11th century, about 1070s, they were forced to go to exile. They left Yerushalayim and they went to Tyre, Tzor. Okay, the Seljuks came from Turkey, that area, and there was a whole mess, and they had to leave Yerushalayim. But they were then already called Yeshivat Gaon Yaakov. They weren't called the Sanhedrin. The name referred to Yeshivat Gaon Yaakov. The heads of the yeshiva were the heads of the Jewish community in the Middle Ages. So they went to Tyre, they went to Tzor, but they were connected to the communities here in the Galil, including the community of Tzfat. And talking about the Middle Ages, the 11th century, before the Crusaders came. And not only that, but Eliyahu Kohen, one of the last heads of the community, heads of the Yeshivat Gaon Yaakov, passed away in Tyre and was brought by foot 3 days to Dalton, right near here, and buried there next to Yossi Aglili. And in the end, in the year 1211 CE, the last of the Gaonim of Eretz Israel, okay, not only in Babylonia, there were Gaonim here, the last of the Gaonim, the Rosh Yeshivat Gaon Yaakov, the last one, was here in Tzfat in 1211 CE. Okay, he was called Tzadok, and Tzadok HaTzadik, Rosh Yeshivat Gaon Yaakov, is mentioned by Rabbi Yehuda El Chalizi, who was here in Tzfat during the 1210, 1211, maybe a little later. He met him here in Tzfat, and he is the last one. And then, a few hundred years later, in 1538, here in Tzfat, Rabbi Yaakov Be'erav tried to revive the Sanhedrin here in Tzfat. Already then, there were many rabbis here in Tzfat. Rabbi Yaakov Be'erav was considered the head of the rabbis. And he allowed himself to at least try and revive the Sanhedrin when Tzfat would be the center of the Sanhedrin. But the rabbis of Yerushalayim then didn't like that idea. Okay, Rabbi Levi ben Chaviv thought otherwise, and he argued against it. And we have the argument back and forth. In the end, we had to wait longer, a little while longer, until the 16th century. And now we're talking about the 16th century. So that happened then, and Sanhedrin wasn't revived, but he did succeed in giving smicha, in ordaining a few rabbis, including Rav Yosef Karo,
who then ordained the
Alshech.
Alshech.
Ordained Rabbi Moshe Alshech.
That's right.
So that happened in 1538. Rabbi Yosef Karo is here in 1536. You know Shlomo, Rabbi Yosef Karo, and his good friend and chavruta, Rabbi Shlomo Elkabetz, the Levi. We have about the Levi'im.
Yes.
We have the ordination of the Levi'im here in our parasha.
Yeah.
Rabbi Shlomo Halevi Elkabetz, he came to Tzfat with Rabbi Yosef Karo after the first Tikkun Leil Shavuot that was recorded probably in Saloniki in 1533. That's where the Malach, the Magid, or the Shekhinah, the Mishnah, the Neshama, she talked from the throat of Rabbi Yosef Karo in the middle of the Tikkun. She told them how she enjoyed hearing them learn all the 24 books and how the 24 jewels of the bride, but she told them, go up to Eretz Israel. And it took them probably 3 years, but both of them came to Tzfat in 1536. Rabbi Shlomo Elkabetz Halevi and Rabbi Yosef Karo, who maybe thought of himself as Moshe Rabbeinu. They were reconstructing Matan Torah. They were reconstructing Mount Sinai and the Tikkun Leil Shavuot. And they came to Tzfat. So the Tikkun Leil Shavuot, we did the Tikkun 2 nights ago. This Tikkun in Saloniki brought these people to Tzfat.
Wow.
And I like to say that's when the golden age of Tzfat began.
Yeah, for sure.
So the Levi, Rabbi Shlomo Elkabetz, who's buried, of course, in the cemetery, is one of the most famous Levi'im we have in Jewish history. He started out Kabbalah here in Tzfat. The Ari came only 35 years later. Rabbi Shlomo Elkabetz was already an important Mekubal, an important Kabbalist already then.
But Tzfat also was Ir Miklat, no? Or
Ir Miklat?
Or a city of Kohanim, I heard.
Yefé Ma'od, Yefé. Good, you reminded me. Of course you're right. Tzfat, in the time of the Talmud, is one of the 24 villages or towns there that are mentioned in the 24 priestly family list There were 24 priestly families that we know about their names already in Divrei Hayamim, okay, from the Tanakh. And we have a list of these 24 priestly families living in 24 towns in Galilee.
All in Galilee?
Okay, all in Galilee,
Wow.
in Lower Galilee and in Upper Galilee. And one of these towns is Tsfat. Tsfat wasn't a big and important city in the time of the Talmud. Tveria was the important center, and Tzipori. In Upper Galilee, we have Gush Chalav, and Tzfat was a little village probably, but important enough for it to be one of the 24 priestly towns where there were Kohanim, Yakim Ufashchur. Yakim Ufashchur. We don't know, are these two families or one family with two names, or we don't know exactly the relationship between Yakim and Fashchur, but it's one of the 24 villages or towns where priests used to live in Galilee. Some of them today are, places like Arav. Okay, it's a big Arab town today. And others are in other places around us. Most of them are probably in Lower Galilee. Tveria is not part of it. You know why?
Why?
Because Kohanim didn't like to live in Tveria.
Why?
Because a lot of tombs there. For
Oh,
Kohen,
I see.
even today, they have problems when they travel down the main road in Tveria, because underneath it, there are graves. I was the archaeologist of Tveria.
Right.
I made a map of the ancient graveyard of Tveria. It's all the bottom part of Tveria, all of it is one big ancient graveyard.
Wow.
And the Kohanim, some of them, don't go down the main road, El Chadef Road in Tveria. They go around.
Wow.
Okay? And so Tveria was not. Even though Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai purified Tveria, it says, the famous story, that after they came out of the cave of Ke'in, of Becca, wherever they were, after the 13 years being there, they went to Tveria. And there they cleaned themselves up in the hot springs of Hamat. And they asked the people of Tveria, they thought, thank you very much for having us here. What can we do for you? And so the people of Tveria told Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, one thing please do, take away all the tombs. And he purified Tveria. Okay, that was in the second segment. But since then, we had other people, Jews, passing away in Tveria, and they were buried in different places. And so Tveria is not one of the places that's mentioned, but right near Tveria we have Beit Ma'on. So Tzfat also, good reminded me, that's right, Tzfat is also.
But let me ask you, I looked at the statistics, there's close to 2 million people that go visit Jerusalem every year. Most of them are not Jewish, right? By the way, Christians, most of them, according to the statistics, and over 1 million that come to Tzfat. Why is it, do you think, that so many people are attracted to come to Tzfat?
Okay, that's interesting. Only in the past few years, I'm noticing that non-Jews are coming to Tzfat. Because I think they're beginning to hear of its spirituality in general. And mysticism is not only a part of Judaism, okay? That you know more than me. Okay? And I'm not a mystic. I like to say, okay, ani lo mekubal. Okay? Ani bekoshi mekubal al ishti. I'm an archaeologist, historian, okay? But people are interested in spirituality, and they hear about Tzfat, and things happened here in Tzfat. In Tzfat, the only Jewish woman in Jewish history who had a Magid, who had a mentor, an angel mentor that she used to converse with, is here in Tzfat. Francisa Sarah, from the time of Rabbi Moshe Alshech. So even the women of Tzfat were unique. The daughter of Rabbi Shlomo Elkovitz used to come and hear the sermons of Rabbi Chaim Vital, maybe in the Abu Hab, maybe here. And even though there's no women's section here in the Alshech,
Right.
but I think the women used to be outside there and try to hear the sermons of Rabbi Moshe Alshech. The women of Tzfat were special, were unique. And that's also something that attracts people. People here all over the world about, of course, Jews come because Tzfat was the center of Halakha, Shulchan Aruch, and also Kabbalah. And sometimes the same rabbi would be also an important halachic figure, but also Makubal of Yosef Karo, the Alshech.
Yeah,
He was also big. He was a
halachic.
commentator, but he was a Makubal also, right? You know more than me
Yeah.
about that. And the sermons he gave here. So he was like these people were intertwined with halacha and Kabbalah together, even within the same person. That's not so much known. People think that Yosef Karo maybe like a Rav Ovadia, okay, the great halachist, halacha, Jewish law. But Rabbi Yosef Karo was also Makubal. He wrote the Magid Misharim.
Amazing. So we're coming close to the end of our allocated time. Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned yet that you'd love to bring up in
Okay, I'll tell you the end of the parasha is a story, not a celebration, but a reprimand of Aharon and Miriam, who started saying things about Moshe Rabbeinu and his wife Tzipora, Isha Kushit Lakach. So Miriam was punished with leprosy. And then I was thinking, Miriam, she's an important figure. First of all, according to a Jewish tradition, she's buried in Tveria.
That's right.
With other important mothers of Judaism.
This is the kever of Imaot.
Kever Imahot.
Yeah, I've been
That's
there.
right.
Beautiful, beautiful kever.
That's right.
Yocheved is buried there.
Yocheved and Bilhah and Zilpah, but also Miriam, the sister of Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah.
And then I remembered that in the Kinneret, we have a tradition that the well of Miriam that accompanied them in the desert was left in the Kinneret. Why in the Kinneret? And the answer is because the people of Tveria, the people of the Galil, believed for years and years that the children of Israel entered Canaan, entered Israel, not in Jericho down below, but in a different Jericho at the bottom part of the Kinneret called Bet Yarach. And they entered Canaan through the Kinneret.
Was that near Bet Sha'an? Is that near Bet Sha'an?
No, Bet Yarach is on the shore of the Kinneret, the southern shore of the Kinneret.
Right.
Yerach, Yericho. And they believe that the plains of Moab is opposite where Ein Gevi is, opposite Tveria, that area. Okay, they believed that Susita was Mount Nevo. And so they entered Canaan by way the Kinneret.
Right.
And when they entered Canaan, there was already water. So the well of Miriam that accompanied them in the desert stayed in the Kinneret, swallowed up in the Kinneret itself. And that's the Talmud already tells us. And the people of Tveria, the people of Galil, they had these traditions that everything that happened in our area of Tzfat, all of Bereshit, all of the book of Genesis, the stories there, are located here. Tzfat was identified as Beit El. Sure.
Tzfat was Beit El?
Yes. Tzfat was
Really?
identified wrongly, but identified by Jews, and not only Jews, as Beit El.
What do you mean
Of course.
wrongly? It was identified wrongly as Beit El?
We know Beit El is near Yerushalayim.
Right.
Okay, but the traditions of Galilee were that we're in Beit El, and Yaakov crossed the Jordan in the door he crossed over on the bridge of the daughters of Jacob.
Right.
Okay, so we can talk that sometime else. But when the Ari wants to solve a problem for Rabbi Chaim Vital was telling the Ari, I don't understand you. You're talking too fast. Slow down or do something. I want to understand every word you say. So the Ari told him, don't worry, come with me. They left Tzfat, they went down to Tveria. They took a boat, and on the way down south, they saw on the shore, right in the shore, pillars that were covered up by water. They came to the pillars, and the Ari gave to Rabbi Chaim Vital a cup of water that he filled up from between the pillars. He gave it to Rabbi Chaim Vital and said, drink. He drank that water, and the Ari told B'chaim Vital, now you'll begin to understand me.
Wow.
Because you've just drank the waters of the well of Miriam. So in my survey of Tveria, I found the pillars. I didn't find the well, but I found the pillars where I think the Ari of Yitzhak Luria identified there the well of Miriam.
Is that the place that has a sign, this is the bear of Miriam?
Yeah, there's a big stone put there, and it says this, but it's on the sidewalk.
That's right.
So no one knows that the site itself is about 10 meters below on the shore. They put the stone, but they also put a little sign there, but no one notices. Who listened to an archaeologist? If a great rabbi, Shlomo, you say, come to Alshech. Sham, because maybe the Alshech also was down there. The Ari brought Rabbi Chaim Vital there. It's described by Rabbi Yaakov Tzemach, the student of the Ari, the student of Rabbi Chaim Vital. It's described there. We have the story. The Ari took him down there, and that's where he identified, I think, the well of Miriam, even though right now there's no well you can see. It's the shore of Kinneret. The water came back up. Okay, you can touch the water, and some people go there and take a glass of water and drink. I saw people do that. There are only a few people. It's not a famous place yet because there's no important rabbi that came down and did something there yet. Most of them still go out by boat. In the middle of the Kinneret, okay, the captain of the boat will stop and tell everybody, here's the well of Miriam, and some people will jump out just to swim in the well of Miriam. And that's fine also.
Tell me, what would you like to do now, having achieved all that you've done in your life? What would you now like to dedicate your energies to?
Okay, what I'm doing right now is I'm working on the ancient cemetery of Tzfat, because for years, it was dilapidated. It was even dangerous walking there. But the religious council of Tzfat, for the last years, or even 20 years, even more, they've been setting up the cemetery, making it easier for people to walk. They're making bridges. Now you can walk to the Ari. You walk to the Shlomo El-Kabet. You can walk there very easily. You can even walk down steps to the Alshech.
That's right.
Okay, very easily, and that's very important. But while they were fixing up the cemetery, they were cleaning it up. The topsoil, they were cleaning the topsoil. A lot of tombstones were discovered
underneath
and uncovered. Hundreds of them.
Right.
And in about 130 of them, there's writing, there's script on them, and some can be read, and some are even whole. There are about 130 of these epitaphs, as you can see from them, that I believe are before 1700. So I'm trying to decipher. David Afnezer was found from the religious council. Is finding them, discovering them with other people like Leo Ben Tovim and others. We're trying to decipher these epitaphs, and I'm publishing them. And I hope in the next few years, maybe this year even, I'll publish even a catalog of 130 of them. There are a few articles already published in English and Hebrew. And you know who's really interested in this? Scholars from outside of Eretz Israel. The ones that are working in the ancient cemeteries in Europe. Just yesterday, I got an email from a scholar from Poland, from the Jewish Museum in Poland.
Right.
He's working on the ancient cemeteries in Poland.
Yeah.
In Warsaw, there are hundreds of thousands, a big cemetery in Warsaw. So he writes me an email and says, it's very interesting. He started to get interested in these ancient tombstones in Tsfat. Because in Poland also we have ancient tombstones from the 16th century in Krakow and even I think in Warsaw. In Germany we have tombstones from 800 years from the time of Rashi, in Germany, France. And now in Eretz Israel, and this maybe I'll finish, here in Tzfat, in the cemetery of Tzfat, we have the biggest concentration of epigraphy, of ancient Jewish inscriptions in one place that you can still come and see. It's an open museum, okay? Tombstones like this are displayed in the famous archaeological museums in Italy, in the Capitol Museum in Rome. I was recently in Napoli, in the most very important archaeological museum in Napoli.
Mm-hmm.
They have there displays of ancient Jewish epitaphs from the 16th century. You can see it there displayed on the wall. Okay, only 500 years ago. And here we have this in situ, in the cemetery itself. You can go there and see them. Okay? Not many do. Everyone goes to the Ari. Everyone goes to Yosef Karo. But if you want to see the ancient inscription, you have to go further down and walk around and see it. You can read the ancient inscription.
You have to take me there. Well, let's finish off with, why don't you give a blessing to our viewers?
A blessing?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm
blessing.
not a rabbi.
You're a Jew. You're a Jew. So you can give a blessing.
Okay. I'd like to bless everybody who's listening with the blessing of the elders of Tsfat.
Huh.
Because we in Tsfat, we don't say until 120. We don't say Ad 120 in Tsfat.
No, what do you say?
I'll tell you, I hope I'm not saying something. Okay, but here in Tsfat, we want more than 120. We want more than Moshe Rabbeinu here in Tsfat.
Well,
that's why everything is blue.
Hang on, how long was Moshe Rabbeinu?
120.
Yeah, so we want more than that.
We want more.
So do we give a figure?
I think that's why we had an earthquake. We're saying things we shouldn't say. Okay, with Tzfat. What about Yerushalayim? That's why we had the earthquake. But here in Tzfat, the elders of Tzfat, they maintain 120 is not enough. In 1495, there was a Jew here in Tzfat, 130 years old,
Wow.
recorded. So I'll tell you, Ad 120 we say Ad Ke 120, Ad Ke 120. Instead of saying Ad 120. So my blessing is, for people who are out of Tzfat, come to Tzfat, and maybe you'll be with us. Ad 120.
Love it.
And here we're defended against the angel of death. The blue down here mixes him up. He gets mixed up, looking down, sees the blue. He thinks he's in the sky. He goes away and leaves us here.
I didn't hear that. That's lovely. That's lovely. But did you hear, by the way, that Tzfat was a portal between heaven and earth, a gateway?
That's right. That's another reason why everything is blue. We're connected. This blue connects us up to the blue skies. In Tzfat, the skies are always blue,
yes,
right?
yes.
This connects us to the sky, to the Shekhinah herself. You want to take the Shekhinah and shake off her dust, like Shlomo Godsi wrote, shake off her dust, so the redemption should begin.
Amen. And it's a great privilege that our Alshech Academy, which just started a few weeks ago, the logo is the blue. So, B'ezrat Hashem, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Yossi. And
Sure.
please God, if you do come to Tzfat, I really recommend Yossi as your tour guide. He's fabulous. I've given many of my VIPs the connection, and they've thoroughly enjoyed it. And asking for a copy of his book. Thank you so much. God bless.